from the Eiffel Tower in Paris to the Colosseum in Rome. Europe's most popular tourist sites have been welcoming visitors again after months of lockdown. Although Europe has reopened its borders to travelers from more than a dozen countries, a crucial part of the tourist trade will be missing this summer.
There's been great damage, especially for destinations like Rome, Florence, Venice, that in the last years had been making a living out of tourism, especially American tourism. Not to mention that the ban hits also those tourists coming from countries that usually spend more, like Russia or Brazil.
The European Union on Tuesday gave its green light to travelers from 14 countries, ranging from Algeria to Uruguay. China, where COVID-19 first emerged, received provisional approval if it allows EU travelers entry in return. Missing on the safe travel list, however, is Turkey, which has a much lower death rate than its European peers. Also barred are people from Russia, India, Brazil and the US, which have the world's highest numbers of infections. Brussels says it will review and update the list every 2 weeks. It hopes relaxing restrictions will salvage its battered $900 billion tourism industry and pull its aviation sector out of a nosedive. Airbus, Europe's biggest plane maker, is planning to cut thousands of jobs to survive the coronavirus crisis.
These figures have come back as a shock. As recently as March, we were still recruiting and looking for skills that were hard to find. 3 months later, you are cutting almost 15,000 jobs.
Workers at EasyJet are facing a similar fate. The British budget airline said in May that it may cut 4,500 jobs to stay competitive. Those cuts may include a third or more than 700 of its UK-based pilots. The carrier also plans to close bases at 3 UK airports and reduce its presence in Germany. The economic fallout of the pandemic is one of the major challenges Germany is facing as it takes over a 6-month EU presidency. Chancellor Angela Merkel is expected to push for an $840 billion rescue plan this month, which would be financed through shared EU debt. It could help the bloc to both bridge a critical summer season and cope with its deepest recession since World War II. Sibel Karkus, TRT World.
Well, for more on this, Bruno Verstraete joins us now from Zurich. He's a partner and chief economist at Lakefield Partners. Great to have you back on the program, Bruno. Now, can I start with this partial reopening of the EU's borders? So 15 countries will now be allowed to travel back to the continent. How important is this for the pandemic-battered tourism industry in Europe?
Good afternoon. This is really important. I think one should not underestimate tourism in European GDP. In total, it represents about 12% of GDP, and for some countries like Spain, it's up to 15% of GDP. So they do need the tourists from worldwide to go and visit their countries. Just to give you an idea, there's about 15 million American tourists visiting Europe every single year. All of that not taking place is clearly having a huge effect, a negative effect on GDP in Europe, which has already been battered by the non-consumption because of lockdowns.
Yes, and in fact, some in Europe's tourism industry have expressed their disappointment that the US was left out of this list. As you just pointed out, travellers from the United States are generally big spenders and account for a large slice of tourism on the continent. Do you believe the EU made the right decision in denying entry for Americans for now?
Well, I think at this point we see a bit of a tug of war between the economy and the medical science in a way. And I think at some point we will see pressure coming in from the economy. But on the other hand, one still needs to realize that the number of cases is increasing and one wants to put off the pressure on the medical system. So it's really finding a very fine balance between the two. It will take time. This normalization is not going to take place immediately, but that is the exercise what politics is up to at this stage.
As we know, though, the EU's announcement wasn't enough to stop Airbus, the European airplane maker, from announcing 15,000 job cuts. How big of a blow is this for Europe's aviation industry?
Well, I think it's a very big one. The good news, if we can call it like that, is that the industry worldwide has been impacted. It's not just one region; it's a global phenomenon. It's a pandemic, and because of that, relatively speaking, companies are not more or less affected. They're all affected almost the same, albeit with a bit of a delay or a bit earlier. But it's clear that this is a very big employer, and that will leave very long-term scars to the economy, into the unemployment and into the consumer confidence and spending in the long run, making it a much longer process to normalization of the economy.
Okay, Bruno Verstraete from Lakefield Partners in Zurich, thank you again for joining us on the program.